Darcy Caitlin Clark Leech, and I put Mind Sculpt Games on the map. Literally. And it's a competitive market, right? And when you pick your location, one of the most important things is that you map your competition and you think of it as competition. You know, Caitlin Clark, she might look nice, approachable in an interview, but you come into her house and try to score on her hoop, and she's going to try to take it to you. So what you got to realize about starting a retail business is that you've really got to think about what's out there already that exists in your market. Because the people that earn a living, support their children, try to build for their retirement by doing what you want to do, maybe as a hobby, maybe as a living, aren't going to take it lightly if you end up on their competition map. So game store retailers in general, whatever you want to start up, not only do you need to have knowledge in the subject, not only do you need to have starting funds, but you need a location that'll work out for you, not just based on frontage, not based on traffic, but that has analyzed purposefully the competition map so you don't get it taken to your grill when you set up in somebody else's backyard. So in all seriousness, it's really important that you think about this, that you analyze your location for proximity to other businesses, both game store focused if you're like us, or big box focused where there's not as much focus on Pokemon. But did you know on 10th Street, Mind Sculpt Games is on 10th Street, right? Bing! On 10th Street, we have Walmart and 3 different Dollar Generals in our town, 2 on 10th Street, that will sell Pokemon packs. So that puts 4 Pokemon pack sellers on my street. And I have to be different than those. And you know what? There's lots of restaurants in a town, right? Like some restaurant offerings are the equivalent of the McDonald's drive-thru. Some are a sit-down restaurant where you enjoy the nice selection. And some have the best steak you've ever tasted because they've got the best selection of singles, elite trainers, booster boxes, box sets, and a wide selection of packs. Mind Sculpt Games doesn't try to be the McDonald's of Pokemon. Partially because, no offense, big box stores, but big box stores will often have, less knowledgeable staff about specific things that they sell because they sell so much. And that's why we differentiate on our competition map between game store focused, strong retail, heavy staff knowledge that will be centered in the nexus of what we sell. But we also have to acknowledge that big box stores or even smaller box stores like GameStop are sometimes going to have what we have. Sports cards included now, right? So when we look at our map, we not only have to think, is there another card store in this town, but is Target going to be selling board games? Is Walmart going to be selling board games? Is Barnes & Noble going to, every season clearance out their board games? And do I have enough competition map between those big box stores to have a spot where I can cater to customers that want a different variety, not the big box board game experience, but the hobby store board game experience? And those are really important. So you need to know how many customers you have in a 5-mile radius, a 15-minute radius, and a 30-minute radius. And retail science really says that after a 30-mile radius, it's very hard. The gravity is not strong enough to pull them towards your location, and they might skip an event, skip the retail experience, or drive to a closer store. And if you've got a store within 30 minutes of you, you're their competition every day. They are your competition every day. And if you're thinking, oh man, I'd love to be in my hometown's Salina. There are 3, maybe 4 stores there. There used to be 1 or 2 when I was growing up. They might be oversaturated. We'll talk about those numbers in a bit. But if I said, man, I just love, it'd be the most fun thing in my life to run a hobby store in my hometown. If the map is oversaturated, going to use strong language here, it's selfish in a way that endangers your own family's financial future and the economic viability of the businesses already established. So I'm going to try to convince you to do the math and competition map and pick a store where you can draw 60 to 70% of the traffic within your 5, 15, 30-minute radius so that you can be a nexus that not only survives, but thrives. Because sometimes surviving in business is such a thin margin that your take-home pay barely feels like survival. People can survive while being tortured. Remember that, and don't start a business in a stubborn spot if the competition map just doesn't fit it. Because, I mean, let's be honest, we actually have a second store in Great Bend. They're in the back of another business. I'm not going to talk too much about it, right? But there are levels to the competition. And if you're going to rent your own place, if you're going to buy a building, you are staking into ground, right? And if you're going to run, at open conventions in front of the courthouse, or you're going to go to the trade shows, or there's a craft mall and you're going to set up with your Pokemon cards, that is a different threat level to a business than, somebody spending 6 figures to start a business in our town that does the same thing we do. Now, I'm risking something, but if a card shop opens and operates kind of as a hobby business, there are multiple card shops in our driving nexus, within an hour or 2 hours of us, that are running out of the back of another business, that are run kind of for fun, where the owner has a day job and they're doing, 15, 20 hours a week. And that is a different customer pool. You really can't expect to pull 30 miles worth of drivers to you, or maybe even be the top of mind in your own town, if you're not invested big enough. So not only do you have to look at your competition map, but in that map, you've got to think about the gravity pull you'll have on customers. And if you're running out of the back of somebody else's business, it gets very difficult. But if, Caitlin Clark gets her game face on, if somebody were to purchase property or lease long-term property within the 5-minute, 15-minute, or 30-minute radius of Mind Sculpt games, it might have to be game face. You get 5 fouls before you foul out in a WNBA game. And what you just got to realize is if you pick to place a store next to a big dog, it becomes, we're gamers, right? It becomes like Catan, where they come near you. Do you go steal their cards with the robber? Nobody's stealing cards here, but strategically, do you save your counter spell? I've been in business for 8 or 9 years. Let's consider that 8 or 9 lands on the table, and somebody tries to set up and play from turn 1 in my game. I might have a handful of counter spells, and when they try to, order enough Pokemon, maybe the big store undercuts you on prices for 3 months, and they wonder whether you can survive with your starting funds if you're not the cheapest store in town, and that was your strategy. There's so many factors that could, the bigger the engine, the more strategies they could take on to counter or move against the first few opening moves of your strategy. And the way to avoid that is to look for white spots on the map. Don't go where it's really dense. Don't pick the 140,000 traffic spot in Wichita. And don't pick, did you know that if we count up all the stores in Salina that sell Pokemon packs, you can probably get to, I think Grok, I used the AI to look at it, I think Grok got to over 20. And you take that population number and you've really got to ask, is that sustainable? So what you need to be able to do is find a space on the map. Don't pick one where there's already 5 stores. Don't pick it because you've been going to the store for years and you love it and you think, I could do this. Do it elsewhere. Research and find somewhere where you can be the biggest 60 to 70% customer draw in a 30-minute driving distance. Look at how many potential customers are in there. So in our town, we have about 14, 15,000. In our county, we've got, 18, getting up there towards 20 in our 30-minute driving distance. And we have the Walmart, we have the Dillons, we have the grocery stores. So rural Kansas story, we have a little gravitas that pulls customers into our highway through our town that I talked about in another video. And that allows us to have more reach miles wise. In Wichita, if you're competing as one of those stores, your reach might be like 5-10 miles before another store's closer. It might be 3 miles. And in my town, it's like 25 to 30 because we're pulling those customers in. They're already on our highway through Walmart. They visit Great Bend. We are the closest store. There's really not another established store for an hour or so on a large scale. And if you want to go like with somebody that's been in business for more than 5 years, that has their own building and isn't out of the back of another business, then you've got to go even farther, right? You're looking at like an hour and a half, Salina, Wichita, to find those established, loyal customer base, large stores. And honestly, we can make our map a little different by being 5,000 square foot, by purposely picking selections of product lines that don't have competition in those areas. But what you've got to be able to analyze is how many customers do I have within a 30-minute drive where there's nobody closer that's a specialty hobby store that does what I do. How many of those customers can be gamers? And you know, like tabletop hobby where there was cards, role-playing, board games, it's supposed to be about 25% of people ages 20 to 35 that have some level of that hobby. And you might want to do your own local research and see how many it is, because it's probably different in rural Kansas than, you know, like Metro Seattle where Magic was born. It's probably different. So you need to know some of like not only the general data, but more regional data. That might take polling. It might take like data you could pull out of databases. We actually worked with Fort Hays State, had the Small Business Development, SDBCC, and they helped us pull a lot of that data. And having someone that is like a professional to help you start your business, we didn't pay them. It's a government program to try to like promote businesses in our neck of the woods. But you can find those people, and AI can do a lot. So go look at the competition map of in Grok or ChatGPT. Say, what is the competition map for Pokemon pack sellers in, and put your zip code and see what it says. Because what you need to do is you need to take your potential customer number. Like we've got a town of, 15,000. Then you times that by, I think I can convert 25% of these to customers initially. Maybe if we push and build a culture, we can get it up to 30, 35%. If we include sports cards, we can get more dads in. If we can become a gift getting center for Christmas with, plushies and science kits and brain games that work really well for 8-year-olds, maybe I can push that conversion level up to like 40%. Maybe I get really good at this and 50% of my town wants to shop at Mind Sculpt Games at least once a year. You've got to look at your potential customers, how much you expect those customers to spend, and that might be in different groups, right? Like I think I can have 120 Magic players. I think I can have, 200 Pokemon collectors. And I think this amount of their dollars will come to a hobby store versus, Walmart retail. They want to be there Friday, 7:50 or whatever the delivery time is. That dollars don't go to you if you're a hobby store, but you take your potential customers, their expected budget, and that number needs to be well over your break-even cost. And we will talk about that later. But if you don't want to do the math of potential customers times their potential budget and see if that's over the break-even, that's pretty complex math at that point. You're going to have to do a lot of different things. Business might not be for you. Stepping into somebody's competition zone without doing your math might be financially dangerous. Somebody might take it to you. Okay, so you just got to think through, am I willing to financially risk for this amount of return? Can I find a space on a map that I would like to serve in the area? And it's even better if you do have connections that are genuine to the community, like you've lived there for a while. But it is impossible if it's already oversaturated for a store that doesn't have huge amounts of money to build and take parts of the competition map. Think of it as like World of Warcraft or Age of Empires. If you want to encroach on someone's territory and successfully gain those customers for you, to convert more customer base to you, it takes a lot of resources. And if you're building on a budget, you might not want to pick that because it might just mean that your budget goes to zero. So picking a competition map, really important. Making sure you can analyze how many customers you expect to draw out of the location that you would pick. Making sure that that is reasonable to the amount of, English speakers, if it's relevant to this game's only printed in English, or there's very few people that play it that, don't speak English well. That's important when you pick your competition map. Not all population is the same when we're talking about collecting Pokemon. Is it the age demographics? Are there enough people in your key age demographic? Are there enough, like males between 20 and 40 that have an expendable income that might be interested in your store? Those are all really important questions. And there are professionals, probably at colleges, maybe consultants, that can help businesses think through those types of questions. Because when you look at a map, if you want to put a business on the map, I paid for that, by the way, to the local paper. That's how I got that spot. If you want to put a business on the map, you've got to think carefully about what it means to your financial future and what it means to other financial futures of already established business owners. Because if you start cutting into somebody who's been doing this business for, 20 years, and they've got to make this money towards retirement because their body isn't the same anymore, right? Like if they lose their business, they lose their retirement. How much do you think they're going to fight? Do you think they're going to say, "Oh, you're making the pie bigger for everybody. Let's share this money. I can accept a little less so that you can have your hobby fun." That might be the way it goes some places, but it might not. And if you're going to spend, the money on a lease for a year or 2 years, you've got to accept the risks that your competition will get in your face, that they will foul you, that you might end up injured in a season because every team that sees you has to put a body on you, has to get in your face, has to foul you before you get the shot up, because that's the strategy to stop you from taking their wins. It's a competitive market. And if you don't map your competition, you might get cannibalized by the competition. And you don't want that when you're starting. So a business can't just happen anywhere. And it's not just for anybody. And if you really want to start any type of retail business, any type of competitive business, any business that's going to draw customers, you need to map your competition. And we'll talk more about that in future videos.